influencing popular culture, politics, and everything in between. The local station takes you ringside as we discuss the crazy world that is professional wrestling. This is Going Ringside with the local station.
Hello there, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Going Ringside. So glad you could be with us today. Before we move forward, I want to ask you to go check out our previous episode, very popular episode with AEW champion Timeless Tony Storm in studio here with me. Made us one of the top 50 podcasts in Australia, which I never thought would happen, but here we are. And Australia is important because of what we got today. We've got a packed show, 2 major interviews. We're going to have both in one show. The first on this Australia thing, Smackdown Tag Team Champion Grayson Waller is with us in just a couple minutes to talk about Smackdown, what they have going on post-WrestleMania. Of course, Smackdown coming to Jacksonville, Florida, where we are at on May 17th on a Friday night. And then following that, the movie that I am most excited about in 2024, maybe a movie you haven't heard about. It stars pretty much half the roster from WCW back in the 90s. That would be the Unbreakable Bunch. If you haven't heard about it, stop, Google it right now. We're going to talk to the producers a little later in the show. It stars guys you remember: DDP, Haku, Ernest the Cat Miller. We're going to have the directors coming on to talk about this, which is Ray Lloyd. You probably remember him as Glacier in WCW, and Luther Biggs, who also wrestled in WCW. They made this movie. It's about pro wrestlers versus aliens, a sci-fi movie opening this week in the Midwest and all over the next few months. We'll talk about that a little later in the show. So stay tuned for our interview with the producers of the Unbreakable Bunch movie, a movie that really celebrates pro wrestling in the sci-fi genre. It's going to be a lot of fun. You want to stay tuned and see that. We'll also have the trailer for the movie coming up a little bit later on the show. But first, got to bring in Grayson Waller. Grayson's on top of the world right now. Wins the tag team championship at WrestleMania. And Grayson Waller has been making headlines, and I have wanted to ask him about a lot of things. One of the things he's made a lot of headlines for is what he said, about 6 or so months ago about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. Calling Taylor Swift a 6 outrages all the Swifties online, and then he doubles down and challenges Travis Kelce to a fight. If you remember at WrestleMania in the last couple weeks, Travis Kelce's brother Jason Kelce was there. So I asked Grayson, any tension there? What's the deal? We never quite got a resolution to this whole Travis Kelce thing. So, of course, we asked him about that. We asked him about a lot going on, who he wants to face him in the tag team division in SmackDown in 2024. He is very brash. He is very bold, and he doesn't hold back. And you also want to listen for one thing in the interview we're about to show you. So I'm talking to him a little about, them coming to Jacksonville. Jacksonville, also the headquarters of All Elite Wrestling, WWE's primary competitor. He doesn't hold back when he talks a little about Jacksonville and Tony Khan, AEW's owner, their other property, the Jacksonville Jaguars. He takes some shots at AEW in this interview. Listen for it. So Grayson Waller, he is cocky, he is brash, and he is a tag team champion on SmackDown. So here's our interview with WWE SmackDown tag champion Grayson Waller.
Well, we are excited to be joined now by WWE SmackDown tag champion, a new tag champion, Grayson Waller. Congratulations, sir.
Man, this has been a dream week, lad. And unfortunately, I've got to talk to you, take time out of my celebrations to sit and chat with you. But that's what a champion does, I guess.
Yeah, it is. And we appreciate you taking the time. It is what a week it has been for you. Let's talk about Mania. You walk out of there SmackDown tag team champion.
It looks good, right? It looks real good. I'm not surprised either. You had all these idiots in a ladder match. They're all doing dangerous things. Me and Theory, 6 minutes in, we came out. We took the SmackDown Tag Team Championships like it was nothing. Everyone's talking about the new era. Everyone's talking about the big championship victories at WrestleMania. Everyone's worried about finishing their story. Me and Theory are starting ours.
Do you feel you were the story of Mania, you think, going forward into 2024, as opposed to all that finish the story stuff that you mentioned?
You know, it's a beautiful thing to finish the story. That's really nice. When someone finishes a story, that means they move on. We don't hear about them no more. For myself and Austin Theory, we're just starting. Winning these tag team championships is the start for us. So, you know, for the last year, Judgment Day, we're the SmackDown tag team champions. We didn't really see them on Fridays. You know, they kind of only work Monday nights. But now that we're there, we're bringing tag team wrestling back to SmackDown, and I feel like we're going to take over the whole show.
So talk to me about, you know, going forward. Now that you've got the belts, that also means you have a target on your back. What are you expecting? Are you going to be able to keep those titles? Because everyone's going to be coming for you.
Lad, it ain't any different than what's been happening the last year on SmackDown. You know, everyone wants the Grayson Waller rub. Everyone wants to get in there and try and fight me. And now I just have something for them to try and get off me. And when you look at SmackDown, the tag team division is stacked. You know, you got the Street Profits, you got the New Catch Republic, you got these two flops, Kevin Owens and Randy Orton, who all of a sudden seem to be friends. So I don't care who it is on the SmackDown roster. We're open. We're fighting champions. If you want it, come find us.
I want to say you just went after Kevin Owens and Randy Orton. You're willing to step up to those two legends.
It must be embarrassing for them, you know. For months, they've been tormenting myself, Austin, and my close personal friend, Logan Paul. But then the big stage, the bright lights, Logan Paul, and still United States champion. A-Town Down Under and new tag team champions. So I'm sure Sunday night, Kevin and Randy, you know, laid in their beds. You know, Kevin probably had some French toast sticks or something, sitting in bed eating, and they had to look at us as champions. So it doesn't matter what happened in the last few months. All that matters is what happens on the biggest stage.
Well, I want to talk to you about SmackDown. We're in Jacksonville, Florida. You guys are coming to our neck of the woods May 17th. Tickets are still available. What can fans expect if they come out and watch you, defend that title likely on May 17th?
Finally, some good wrestling in Jacksonville. You know, I feel like it's been years since we've seen some really good wrestling in Jacksonville, and that's what we're bringing back, you know. Somehow, you can get on Ticketmaster right now, $20 to get a ticket. I don't know how I feel about $20 to see the SmackDown Tag Team Champion. But right now, I think we have the best roster in WWE history, hands down, from the bottom to the top. And the SmackDown roster is on fire. And you know, things really do feel like a new era. I think Cody said Renaissance era, and I think that's a perfect name for it. And the SmackDown roster fully exudes that. So if you want to see a show, anyone who was at WrestleMania, anyone who was at SmackDown Raw NXT last week knows live wrestling, there's nothing else like it. And now we're coming to Jacksonville. You know, it's not like you can support the Jaguars. You know, that team sucks. Trevor Lawrence, he's horrendous. Pretty much any sports team in Jacksonville sucks. So maybe you want to come and see a real champion because you ain't going to be seeing one anytime soon.
Are you knocking Jacksonville maybe because of who owns the Jaguars? And because you said the first real wrestling in Jacksonville in a while.
I'm an Eagles fan, man. You know, all I know is about the Philadelphia Eagles. I only know Trevor Lawrence, so I'm not sure what you're talking about, brother.
Okay. Just had to ask. You mentioned the Eagles, which brings me to the other reason we're going to take the long way around, but this is important. You had a couple of Eagles at the WrestleMania. One of them was Jason Kelce. Any tension there? And I want to get to why. We can't ignore that.
You know, it was cool seeing some of the Eagles players coming out and supporting you. Jordan Mailata, the offensive lineman from the Eagles, who's a Bankstown, Sydney, Australia boy. We're from the same area, so it was cool seeing him again, catching up. You know, I did see Jason Kelce there. You know, he was very excited. You know, Jason Kelce's a huge wrestling fan, so for him to get in the ring, I know he's very, very excited. But, you know, there's always a little bit of tension. You know, my mouth gets me in a lot of trouble, but I think that's the kind of thing that we just leave for my knowledge and unfortunately no one else's.
Well, I do have to ask you about that. Travis Kelce and Taylor, you were all over the world late last year talking about them. Is there regret there? Do you take it back? Do you stand by your words?
There's never any regret. You know, I'm very good at what I do. You know, if I want the world to talk about Grayson Waller, the world's going to talk about Grayson Waller. And I pay attention to what's going on, you know. When people are talking about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, all of a sudden they're talking about a WWE superstar. Why is that happening? That's because I'm good at what I do, you know. We've got this flop, Joey Swole, big-time influencer on social media right now. Millions of followers. But they're all talking about me and Austin Theory because that's what I do, you know. I like to cause chaos. I like to cause controversy, and I'm very, very good at it. So I have no regrets. I stand by my statements. And if Trav ever wants to get in the ring, we're always open to it.
That's what I want to know. Is the challenge still on the table for him, or if that, as you say, sixth girlfriend wants to be involved?
Yeah. Right now with WWE, things are going so well. All the celebrities want to get involved. As we said, we had Jason Kelsey and Lane Johnson there on the weekend. We had Lil Wayne. We had Snoop Dogg. So imagine the Kelsey brothers, the biggest podcast in the world besides Logan Paul's. So all right to be number 2, guys. But imagine the Kelsey brothers teaming up and challenging for the Smackdown Tag Team Championships. That's a great story. They're 2 incredible athletes, but they're kind of past their prime. You know what I mean? One's retired, one's on his way. A-Town Down Under, we're down to defend these belts against anyone.
Now, you say you court controversy everywhere you go. Now, if you look up Grayson Waller, speaking here as a journalist, as a news anchor in my other job, and as opposed to wrestling, you've, particularly down in Australia where you're from, you've taken it to some journalists down there lately.
Yeah, obviously part of our job is media, and that's something that we do. And I actually enjoy doing the media. I like talking about myself. I think everyone knows that. But I enjoy doing media where someone's put any ounce of effort into the interview we're doing. You've obviously done some research. You know some names. You know some stuff about me. This is a great conversation. But when you go on some of these shows and they don't know who you are and they've just got some questions their producer wrote up, and, when that turns to disrespect, I have no shame going back at them and kind of letting them know that, like, we don't take that anymore. Like, the jokes about wrestling, the jokes about wrestlers, that they're from the past. Like, we're real athletes. Ask anyone who's tried to step into the ring, especially athletes from other sports. We're the real thing. So if you want to say that that's not true, no problem. I have no problem showing you. And, bit disappointing down in my home country of Australia to be treated like that. But once again, I know how to get people talking about me.
And what was it like doing those shows in Australia and Perth? You guys had such huge shows down there to go back to your home country. That must have been exciting for you.
Yeah, it was awesome. And it had been years, obviously, with the pandemic and other things. It had been, 5 years since we'd been in Australia. And with WWE the way it is right now, I know the Australian audience was begging to kind of see it. So for me to go home, the place that I had to leave to make it here, that was an incredible experience. And have 50,000 Australians to be cheered too, very confusing. I don't know how I felt about it, having people saying nice things about me all week. I enjoyed it for the week, but I don't think I could do it too much often. But that's what WWE is doing right now. We're on the international expansion. We're going to Paris soon. We got Berlin. We got Toronto. We got all these different places. We got Scotland now. That's a bit rough. Don't know how I feel about Scotland. But it's exciting. Get to go all these places and traveling around. And you travel 24 hours and the crowds are just as raucous, just as crazy as the American audiences.
Are you exhausted? I mean, that sounds exhausting. I mean, you're everywhere all over the U.S. You're everywhere all over the world nonstop. And I know the life of a wrestler isn't easy.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think we're always exhausted. But I think that's what people don't see. People think this job is easy. But then anyone who gets involved knows that heavy lies the crown. You can ask Cody now. You can ask anyone who's a champion. That schedule gets difficult. But at the end of the day, I'm doing what I love. Like, I'm traveling around the world. I'm getting to see places I never would have seen in any other way. I'm a champion. This was my dream. Like, I want to be tired. I want to be exhausted. I want to do all these things because that's kind of what it takes. That's what separates us from every other sport. Football, very physically demanding, but they get 6 months off. They're off in Barbados. They're off in Fiji. They're holidaying all over the place. Like, we don't get an off season. We had WrestleMania this week. I got Smackdown Friday, and it all starts again. So that's part of the grind, but when you're good at what you do, lad, it's a fun thing to do.
I want to get your opinion on, I didn't know about this. When I was doing some research on this, did you play Ric Flair on Young Rock?
I did play Ric Flair on Young Rock. That is true, yeah.
How did that come about? Tell me the backstory there.
So basically, like, when the pandemic kind of happened, Australia didn't really have as many cases. So some productions of American films moved to Australia to kind of save some cash because it was going so crazy in America that they were shutting down production all the time. So they moved production of Young Rock to Queensland in Australia. They did some auditions for Ric Flair. And when you talk about charisma, you talk about Ric Flair. But then when you talk about charisma, you talk about Grayson Waller. And it felt like a fun match. And, my scene was actually wrestling against Rocky Johnson, which is kind of crazy now, having The Rock coming back and doing those type of things. It was a fun experience to put on the robe, put on the put on the red boots and kind of live as Rick for a day. I think that's everyone's, as a bloke, that's kind of everyone's dream, just to be one day as Ric Flair.
What was it like being the Nature Boy? I mean, did you have to practice, or could you just channel your inner Nature Boy when you did it?
I think I got a bit of Ric Flair about my personality, to be honest. I think there's a little Ric Flair in me, so that was easy. But I was always a fan growing up. So, I've watched Ric Flair so many times. He was always one of my heroes type of thing. So when we got to get in the ring, it was a lot of fun. Unfortunately for the actor playing Rocky Johnson, not a trained professional wrestler, didn't know that he'd be doing the physical part. So when I put on the figure 4, when I gave him some chops, he was not happy. He was actually extremely unhappy. Chops are not fun. Yeah, they make a loud noise, but they're painful. And I did what Ric Flair does. So it might have got me in a little bit of trouble, but it wouldn't be a day of my life if I wasn't getting in some trouble.
So tell me about, because we mentioned Young Rock, so that makes me think of The Rock and a quote he had recently. I want to get your take on it. He said, "Wrestling is cool again." What is your thought on that?
He ain't wrong. He is not wrong. And anyone who's been in an arena, ever since I got drafted, really, but I think really the last 4 or 5 months, anyone who's been in an arena knows that wrestling is cool again. The vibe is different. And WrestleMania was fantastic because WrestleMania wasn't just wrestling fans. You had people from all different walks of life. Some people going, "Oh, we'll come to the big one. I'll come to the Super Bowl," type of thing. And all of a sudden, you have all these people getting converted. And finally, people are starting to see what we've known for so long. The WWE roster is stacked. Everyone is fun. Everyone is cool. Everyone is edgy. We're kind of changing what we do. And The Rock is right. It is cool again. I have so many of my friends back home who haven't watched in a long time messaging me saying they're watching again. And I love hearing that because they come in because they hear The Rock's back. They hear Cody Rhodes is doing some cool stuff. They see Cena back, all these things. But then they stay for A-Town Down Under. They stay for Jey Uso. They stay for Sami Zayn. They stay for all these other guys. This isn't just a main event show. From top to bottom, from start to finish, right now, WWE is the best it's ever been, in my opinion.
One thing that happened at Mania that I don't think a lot of us expected is we kept seeing CM Punk on screen nonstop, and then until Drew McIntyre showed up. This seems like something that you're probably going to be having a lot of on the show, is these two guys.
Very much so. And, it's great to have Punk still on TV. Sometimes someone gets an injury and they disappear. But the really, really talented guys, doesn't matter if they're hurt or they're 100% healthy, they're going to put on a show. I can speak from experience. When I got drafted from NXT last year, I had a broken leg. But luckily, I'm a great talk show host, so I found my way on the show, and I still found ways to be entertaining. And that's what Punk's doing right now. And I love Drew McIntyre and what he's doing. As a internet troll myself, seeing what Drew's doing right now and seeing how much fun he's had, we had a discussion a few weeks ago about it, about how fun is this? You just get to mess with people. People are so stupid right now, especially on the internet. They buy into anything. It's so easy to get that reaction. And I think me and Drew are very similar in that we're fueled by hate. When people are angry at us, when people are upset, that fuels us. It's fun. We enjoy it. And if I was CM Punk, I'd be a little bit nervous right now. You cost him at Mania. You cost him on Monday Night Raw. I think Drew McIntyre is going to come back with a vengeance.
I want to get your opinion. WWE, obviously, you now the synergy with UFC, and there's been talk of UFC fighters possibly at some point coming in. Go ahead and get the dog. I understand.
He's all right.
There's possibly, UFC fighters at some point maybe wanting to try out WWE. Are you ready for that? What are your thoughts if that ever becomes a reality?
Brother, I've been in the ring with Gable Steveson. I've been in the ring with Julius Creed. These are guys who are world-class amateur wrestlers. That PC is full of some of the best amateur wrestlers that exist. So I know the pain of an Olympic gold medalist double leg. It's not fun. But also, when you put ropes around the ring, everything changes. And I know the UFC guys are seeing what we do and seeing the opportunities they can have, being entertaining as well as having their fight stuff. And I've met some of the UFC guys. Taito Ivasa, the Aussie boy, was at Elimination Chamber in Perth. And he said the same thing. When he saw the vibe of the show, he was like, I'd love to do this. And I think that's a great option for some UFC guys, You can't fight forever. WWE, you kind of have a bit of a longer lifespan. As much as that sounds crazy to me, because I know how much pain we put our bodies through, we have a little bit of a longer lifespan. And I think WWE is a perfect opportunity for some UFC guys who are entertaining, who can talk, but can also fight, to have a second career. And I think it's going to start happening. I think you're going to start seeing probably within the next 12 months, 1 or 2 people, maybe they come for 1 match, maybe they come for 2 matches, and then all of a sudden you might see people completely change their careers and come and work with us. And we're open to it. We want the best in the world. And I love the UFC personally too. You know, I'm a big fan, so I'd love to see Conor McGregor in a WWE ring. I think it's just a thing that has to happen.
If Conor McGregor stepped up, would you take him?
I'd rather be his partner, lad. I think I'd rather be friends with Conor.
Yeah.
But if he wants to fight, if he wants to talk, like, he has to realize in UFC, you're trash talking against Jose Aldo. He can barely speak the language. That's not hard. Hey, come and try and talk trash to us. This is what we get paid to do, lad.
Well, Grayson Waller, WWE Smackdown Tag Team Champion, coming to Jacksonville on May 17th, Friday night. Grayson, thanks so much for joining us today.
Appreciate it, brother. Jacksonville, we're taking over, baby.
That they are. Interesting things in that interview. First off, the shots at Jacksonville. He wouldn't say it directly, but we knew those were subtle digs at the Khans and AEW, because he mentioned the Jaguars, hates the Jaguars, they suck. That's a shot at the Khan family, because they own, and says real wrestling will be back in here in Jacksonville for the first time. So that's really interesting to see him take those not so subtle digs at AEW. Also, I mentioned about those Australian journalists. I mean, Google that. If you haven't seen, he had 2 instances in the last 6 months, both in Australia. One with a morning show in Australia. They had a floor director kind of challenge him to a fight, and Grayson wasn't having it. He's like, you want to fight? Let's do this right now. I'll probably have the cops called on me. Then another reporter tried to do the whole, it's fake, isn't it, type thing, and Grayson wasn't having it and got in the reporter's face. So he's made some headlines. Very brash, very controversial, and of course, the big headline, he still says, Travis Kelce, if you're listening, he still is willing to step into the ring with you, or maybe you and your brother, now that he's part of a tag team, so with Austin Theory. So we'll see. It's really interesting. A lot of good stuff there with Grayson Waller. Glad he was able to come on. Once again, they'll be in Jacksonville, where we're at on May 17th for Smackdown. The other thing I want to talk to about today, I'm just as excited about. I did not know this movie existed until I saw it wind up on my Facebook feed, and is officially released for the first time. If you're watching this now, this Friday, April 19th, in select markets in the Midwest, and then they're going to grow, and we're going to talk about that. It's the Unbreakable Bunch movie. Google it now if you don't know anything about it, but first, let's watch the trailer. The trailer filled with wrestlers. If you liked WCW in the 90s, this is the sci-fi, campy, fun movie for you. Let's roll the trailer.
In a quiet Florida town, life was simple until everything changed.
Did you see that?
As an alien force invades and takes control, a group of unlikely heroes must come together to save the day. They fought epic battles in the ring, and now they're back, joining forces for the ultimate fight of their lives. With every townsperson in danger, these seasoned warriors will have to bring their A-game to defeat the alien menace. In a battle where stakes are higher than ever, it's time to wrestle with destiny.
Pro wrestling versus aliens. Man, that's like a monster movie.
So very excited about that. The Unbreakable Bunch, opening this Friday in select markets, and then probably in a theater or near you, because they're going to open a lot of places around the country, and if not, they'll eventually go to various streaming platforms where you can see it. So I want to invite the producers on. Some guys you may recognize. First, Ray Lloyd, who you probably remember in WCW as Glacier. He is one of the producers, alongside Luther Biggs, who also was a wrestler in WCW back in the 90s. Did you see those stars in there? Ernest Miller, Haku, Stan Hansen, Larry Zbyszko, DDP. Packed with wrestlers. So they say it is a movie to celebrate just wrestling. A sci-fi, fun movie. So let's get to it. Here's our interview with Luther Biggs and Ray Lloyd, the producers of the Unbreakable Bunch movie. Well, we're joined right now by the producers here of the movie, Luther Wilson and Ray Lloyd, who you may have known as Glacier back in the day. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Tell me all about the Unbreakable Bunch. How did this all start?
Luther, you want to go first?
Yeah, this is just an idea that we had many years ago, sitting around an apartment in Orlando. I think it might have been 2009, believe it or not. And we started, we were having some refreshments and just had a little note page and started writing things down and came up with a bunch of ideas, and that changed over time. And Ray is a very organized guy, so the notepad did not get lost. And it's just, it's two guys that had a dream, and we just kept working towards that dream. It took a long time, but here we are. We've got our picture done.
So, Ray, our viewers knew you as Glacier back in the day. How did you go from retired wrestler to movies? How did that transition happen?
Well, actually, I moved to Atlanta. I broke into wrestling in '87. Luther and I broke in about the same time, even though we didn't meet till actually in '96 when we met at the WCW power plant. But I broke in '87, moved to Atlanta. I went to college in Valdosta and moved to Atlanta in 1990 to pursue wrestling. And then, January '96, I signed with WCW. But when I moved to Atlanta in 1990, my mom was a really talented theater actress, which was kind of always her side gig. And I always say I got the bug for performing from her. And so when I moved to Atlanta, I kind of looked into, some acting classes because I thought maybe it'd be something to kind of complement.
I got to stop the interview. I don't want to go any further. You said January of '96, and you like
January
performing.
96.
I don't want to overlook Glacier really quickly. Give me a quick breakdown of how that went for you with some of the greatest introductory videos ever in the history of wrestling.
Oh, well, I always say my favorite quote is that I got from my college athletic trainer, a guy named Jim Madalino, is, it's not necessarily what you know, it's not who you know, it's who's willing to say they know you. Mm-hmm. And I was not the smartest guy in the world, but when I moved to Atlanta, I moved to Marietta, started teaching school, which is what I was doing as my daytime job. I was pursuing my dream of wrestling, but I joined Main Event Fitness, which was owned by two would go on to be legendary wrestlers, iconic figures, Lex Luger and Sting. And just through the independent wrestling scene up in that area, I was training there at their gym. I got to know Diamond Dallas Page, and Luther and I both have been great friends with Dallas for well over 20 years now. But I was working with Dallas on some ideas. And we actually had pitched a couple of things to Eric, and eventually there came a time where there was, this idea. Basically, when Dallas found out about having martial arts background, Eric had that too, and so he scheduled a meeting. We were actually Christmas shopping, there in the December of '95, and he scheduled a meeting for January of '96, and I had this long sit down dinner with Eric, and once we left that meeting, that was the beginning of laying the groundwork for me becoming Glacier with WCW.
Was there a lot of pressure with just the buildup was so incredible for Glacier?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was. But you know what? It's one of those things too, Scott, where I always say that when you get offered a seat on the rocket ship, you don't ask which seat, you just get on it, Yeah. so that's what I did. And
so back to your story. Yeah. So you're going through, you got the kind of the acting bug. Talk to me how you get to this point.
I started working with some acting projects, just small independent acting projects in the Atlanta area, and then Luther and I both. I think we both had that bug for that love for performing, and like I said, through wrestling, that's where we met, and we're big fans of the kind of the legendary ensemble cast films of like the '60s and '70s, like the Wild Bunch, the Magnificent Seven, things like that, and so, that was kind of inspiration too for the story, is what would happen if we put this group of pro wrestlers together and all of a sudden they found themselves in a different world, which is, this sci-fi world battling, outer space aliens.
So Luther, tell me your background. How did it come together for you?
Pro wrestling or acting?
All of it. Yeah. Give me the story.
I started wrestling down here. I was on spring break back in '87. woke up in a hotel room in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and there was a TV commercial on there that said, "Don't go to the school of hard knocks like I did. Come to the Global Wrestling Alliance." And that was Bob Roop's school.
Okay.
I went there. I trained with Roop, Boris Malenko, and Rusty Brooks. And I got involved in wrestling for the first time there, but then I became a football coach, did some high school coaching. I just got away from wrestling. 95, I'm 29 years old, and I'm told that you cannot try out for WCW after the age of 30. So I knew it was one and only, I had to do it right then. I put it off long enough. So I had a great job with the Canadian Football League that I hated to leave. But I went down and tried out at the power plant, and it was 3 days of very, very hard work.
Oh, sure.
I mean, it was very hard. And, it's the guys like to say, anybody who says it was easy is lying. And got through that, and then, sort of got my foot in the door, and then eventually met Ray, met Dallas, met the rest of the guys. Canyon was a real good friend of ours. Big Ron Reese was my roommate for a long time. The Yeti.
Who's in the movie, I noticed. You can't miss him.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, and then after, the greatest thing that happened probably for Ray and I both is when WCW folded, Dusty Rhodes started Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling.
Really? Okay.
Both asked to be a part of that. And so that's, I know for me, I won't speak for him, but for me, that was the highlight of my time in wrestling.
Back up. I don't remember Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling. Where was that out of?
Out of Marietta, Georgia. And it was a small regional promotion that he started. Matter of fact, they've just restarted it, believe it or not, 20 years later. But we went all over the Carolinas, Tennessee, Georgia, parts of Florida. Being on the road with Dusty and the crew that he put together, those are my favorite memories.
It was what a lot happened with a lot of guys when WCW folded. They started, finding indie work. I mean, some went to WWE, but is that kind of what happened to a lot of them?
If you were lucky, yeah. I mean, Dusty was one of the few people running on a regular basis that actually paid well.
Okay.
So we were very lucky there. Anyhow, I ended up taking acting lessons with Burt Reynolds down here in Jupiter, Florida. And that's really where, I got more and more interested in movies, just hanging around him, hearing his stories.
Yeah.
And it's funny because Ray and I met in the power plant. We both were huge Burt Reynolds fans. He was able to get involved in some of the classes.
What was Burt like?
He was a great guy. I mean, very interesting guy.
Yeah.
I mean, talking about somebody who one time was the biggest movie star in the world. And, he, I think, fell on hard times, as everyone knows.
Yeah.
But he was a very hard worker. Ray will tell you when we were there, sometimes he would stay till 3-4 o'clock in the morning working on scenes, and he didn't.
Which was awesome.
So that was pretty fabulous. And so from there, Ray and I got together. We had this dream of this movie, and here it is.
So, what's the movie? It's essentially, I think it's Ernest Miller in the trailer says it. It's wrestlers versus aliens. That's pretty much the movie, isn't it?
I would say so. Yes. I mean, it's about a bunch of retired pro wrestlers. They go on the road one more time just to raise money for a good cause. They find themselves in a town where things are going odd. Things are going strange. The air is thick with danger. And they look around and realize there's an alien presence amongst them. And the story is basically them. I don't want to give away too much. Them.
I mean, that gives me the point. That gives me the idea.
Yes.
So, Ray, talk to me about let's first start with the casting, because I'm looking at this and my eyes bug out of my head with all the WCW stars that are in it.
Yeah, so I always have to look at the list just to make sure I can include everybody, But yeah, several Hall of Fame wrestlers. Diamond Dallas Page, who of course we mentioned has been a great personal friend for a long time. The living legend Larry Zbyszko, the Lariat Stan Hansen, all Hall of Fame wrestlers. Of course, the legendary Tonga Fafita, which the wrestling world knows as Haku, who just had if anybody watched I'm sure a lot of people watched WrestleMania weekend recently, the Hall of Fame ceremony, Paul Heyman gave.
And we just had Haku on the show. Yeah.
Yeah. So And then there's tremendous cast of some other legendary wrestlers like Gangrel, David Heath makes a great appearance in the movie. There's actually a nice little cameo by Missy Hyatt.
Missy Hyatt's in the movie. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And I'm just trying to remember, make sure I don't get anybody. Let's see here.
And you mentioned
Ron about everybody.
Yeah, Ernest the Cat Miller, who's
Ernest Miller's got a big role. It looks like, yeah.
Yeah, and we have some amazing actors in the film as well that are not from the wrestling world.
And I want to mention, I don't mean to cut you off, but I want to mention there are two people from Jacksonville, Florida, who are in the film.
Yeah, where we're based out of. Yeah, that's very cool. It's a big. Yes. A lot of people from Florida, Georgia. Yeah.
Yeah, a local actor there called named Michael Hancock, and he's down there in the Beach Diner in Mandarin.
Okay.
And his wife, who is a kindergarten teacher there in Jacksonville. So they make appearances in the film.
So would you say anyone who liked WCW, Nitro, Saturday Night, whatever the case may be, this is a movie for them?
Right.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, there's we really want to make a movie that celebrates everything that's really great about that era of wrestling. So the wrestlers from, say, that 80s, 90s era. There's a lot of nostalgic feel to this film. And, I was explaining it to somebody earlier today, and I just thought, what we wanted to make a movie that we're big fans of that era of the canon films from the 80s, which launched the careers of Chuck Norris and Jean-Claude Van Damme. So we wanted to make a movie that's a little bit in the spirit of that, which was, kind of that kind of 80s style action sci-fi type film. And we feel like we really hit the mark with this.
So there are wrestlers turned actors, of course, Dwayne Johnson, Cena, Hogan, and all of them, if you watch their first movie versus their latest ones, there's an uphill climb for them in their acting chops. What was it like working with the wrestlers on teaching them, the transition to acting? They were obviously very familiar with being in front of the camera. That's obviously came natural to them.
Yeah, go ahead, Liv.
Well, yeah, I think it was very natural. I mean, especially certain people were more so than others. Larry Zbyszko was amazing. I mean,
Zbyszko looks like a Hollywood legend just looking at him.
Yes, he does. You're exactly right. And you'd think that he'd been out in Hollywood for 40 years, the way that he handled it. He did great. So I'll never forget, I heard an interview years ago where someone was interviewing Arnold Schwarzenegger. And they said, well, you took a real big risk with Jesse Ventura when you did The Predator. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, no, I didn't take a risk at all. What do you mean? And they said, well, he'd never acted. And he said, well, I'd seen him on wrestling. I knew he could do it. So that's sort of how we felt. We thought, I think our guys came through great. And Ray, what do you want to add to that?
Here's the thing, Scott, that I think that our crew, that we worked with learned and other actors who had probably not worked with the wrestlers, was that the one thing we knew, the guys that we cast in this film were, the wrestlers we knew they'd come prepared. We knew they'd be professional. We knew they'd be a joy to work with. So when they showed up, they knew their lines backwards and forwards. And ironically, the first few days we were filming, we didn't do a lot of necessary, takes because, guys didn't know their lines. You adjust for camera angles and you do over because of sound maybe and stuff. But everybody came so prepared that I really think that it really, it was a surprise, a very, positive surprise to the other casting crew that these guys showed up and, they were pros from the get-go. And they were great to work with. They were a pleasure to work with. And that's something I know Luke and I were very proud of is we gave everyone that I think worked on our film, we really tried to give them a great experience. And I think we really did that.
One of my favorite images in the trailer, and all I've seen is the trailer, is Haku with two pistols just firing at the camera. Any fun stories of the wrestlers on the set?
Well, I'll tell you what inspired that shot is that, when we were, when I was talking to him about, when we actually went back and shot some stuff with some scenes with him shooting the guns, he basically was telling me like when he grew up in Tonga as a kid, there were movies that he watched with, and this is going back in the time a little bit as far as a Hollywood name, but there were movies made by this guy named Audie Murphy. And Audie Murphy was I remember Audie Murphy, real military hero who became a Hollywood actor and star. And there were movies that played where he grew up, and he really, really enjoyed watching that guy who could really shoot a gun and really fight. And so when we did the scene where he's firing the gun, when he decided we actually decided, like, hey, I said, why don't we do that? Where you're firing here and then you fire both together. And you can just watch him in that scene. Look how much fun he's having when he's doing that. I mean, that's so yeah. It was something we were glad that we could do for him to give him that scene in the film.
Well, Luther, talk to me a little about the rollout to the movie, your business model and plans for releasing it, and how all that's going to work.
Well, this is the first time we've done this, so we are learning as we go. But we did get a deal up in the Midwest with a theater chain called Imagine, and that is the 9th largest in the country. So they're going to start us in 3 states, and we're going to try and roll it out from there. I've had conversations today with Columbia, South Carolina, and I actually right there in I reached out to Sunray Theaters there in Jacksonville.
Ah, yeah, Sunray, we know them well. I do want to ask because kind of the way the movie industry goes is after the box office, the streaming is what it's all about. Are there plans for streaming down the road to where people will see it? Yeah,
but I want people to come to the theaters because, in my opinion, this movie is too hot for TV.
If people see it in Jacksonville, they can come to Sunray if you guys are able to work that out. Or all those places in the Midwest and the Carolinas. That's great. So
yes, there is a streaming deal that I'm not sure what I can say about it right now.
Well, I know, but that's down the road, and people can look at that, if they're not able to get to the box office. Now, are you excited for these box office rollouts? Like, I mean, this is new territory for you to go into a movie theater.
It is new territory, brand new. And of course, I'm very, very excited. And I hope that we'll be having some of the guys there to make appearances. I know that's been talked about. It hasn't been finalized. But, I just want to say that, you were asking Ray about stories from the set, etc. The best part about the thing was, honestly, us all getting together again. I mean, we had worked together. Ray and I and Ernest had been there at the power plant with Paige and Zabisco. We worked with him, WCW, TNA. So that was just a great, great experience. And I hope we can relive that at the theaters. I hope we can have our guys making appearances.
It's really a fascinating industry where you guys are literally reconnecting in a legit, important way, 30 years later, Ray.
Yeah, and the thing is that we wanted to make a movie, Scott, that we've seen all the wrestling movies that come out, and typically wrestling movies fit into 2 categories. They're either a really dark movie or they're really hokey and they make fun of wrestling kind of. And I get it. I mean, we totally understand that, but there's never been a movie made that we feel made people feel good about being connected to the wrestling business, whether you're a fan or if you're in the business. And that was our main goal, was to make a movie that when people saw it, it made them feel good about, being connected to wrestling. And that was our goal, was to make a movie that, and Luther summed this up in really 3 words, because the movie is about, these guys coming together, the friendship and the bond that they have, is the movie's about camaraderie, loyalty, and friendship. And it's a very, very positive movie. There's a lot of layers to it. I think a lot of layers that people aren't going to expect to see in a movie that action sci-fi film. But it's a movie that shows the side of wrestling that we wanted to show for a long time, is that there's a lot of really good people in the wrestling business. And when we're not out there performing, we're still living very, very good, positive, healthy lives, and supporting each other. Yeah. And that's what we do in the film. And we were really proud to make a movie that really has no profanity in it. I always say no gross humor, like there's no projectile vomiting in the movie and stuff like that, But there is a lot of wrestling. There's a lot of action. There's a lot of gunfire and explosions. And one of the things that I just did a podcast last night, but I meant to mention to Luther earlier today, we're talking, is every chance we could in the movie, we actually tried to use real visual effects. In other words, like real blanks and things like that. So, there are some times when we couldn't do that. So we had to use some visual effects, some CGI with gunfire. But when we could, we used the real practical effects, which look great, because a lot of this movie takes place at night, when we're battling the aliens. So yeah, those are things that we were really excited about, that we could bring to the film that we had not seen in a wrestling film yet.
Luther, what's been the reaction from the wrestling community at large? I mean, now that the trailer is out there and you're starting to get a buzz.
People are getting pretty excited about it. I mean, it's been tough to sit back, and we've wanted to release this trailer for a long time. And now that people are able to see what, they get an idea of what this movie's about, they're getting very excited. I'm hearing from a lot of people. You know, a lot of people are asking for screening copies, and you know, I can't do that. So we're
That's probably smart.
A little over a week away. So drive on up to Michigan, Indiana, or Minnesota, and you can be one of the first people to see the film. But seriously, we hope that it'll be rolling out throughout all of Florida soon, but especially Jacksonville.
And so if people want to keep track of that, and when you get dates, what's a good place people can go? Is there a good website or something where they can check in on ways to watch it?
Yeah, you know, our website for the film is, the unbreakablebunchmovie.com. And, you know, we knew we wanted a good website, so we went to what we thought would be the best to do that. Robert McLaren, who is Diamond Dallas Page's web developer for all of his stuff, and Paige has a huge audience in social media. So we've got a great website. Obviously, we have all of our social media links there. You can click on those, and you'll be able to keep up with all of the cast and crew. All that, the trailers are on the website, but they're also the links to all our social media, so you can just follow those to get, you know, all the most current updates.
Well, Ray Lloyd, Luther Wilson, is an impressive project. We are very excited to watch it. We hope to check in with you guys a little more down the road, but thanks for joining us on the show today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott. We really appreciate you doing this for us. Thank you, buddy.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, so excited to have them on the show. This is actually the movie of 2024 I'm looking the most forward to. It doesn't have the big budget of a lot of Hollywood, but I am looking forward to seeing those guys. And you know which wrestler I want to see the most is Zbyszko. Larry Zbyszko looks like Hollywood A-list actor in this movie. I hadn't seen Zbyszko in years, and then I see him pop up in this trailer. I'm looking forward to it with DDP, with Haku, with Ernest Miller. All these great legends. Thank you for coming on the show. We may have them back on as they get further along down the line, and they've told me they might even make another movie down the road, so we'll be watching. But it's opening the night this Friday, the 19th, in the upper Midwest, and then they're going to start showing up in different markets. Look up the Unbreakable Bunch movie. They've got a website. They'll keep you up with details of where the rollout, where you can watch the movie, hopefully down here in Florida where we're at, in short order. So I want to thank them for coming on the show. And also Grayson Waller, the pride of Australia, really being on here today, Smackdown Tag Team Champion, making some headlines here on Going Ringside, which we always love, specifically with people like Travis Kelce and with the Cons over here with AEW, making some shots at them, not so subtly. So some exciting stuff on the show today. Thank you to all our guests for coming on, and thank you for watching. We'll see you back here next time.
This has been Going Ringside with The Local Station, brought to you every Wednesday on your favorite podcast player, on New Sport Jax Plus, as well as the New Sport Jax YouTube channel.